Hello friends, welcome once again to Rick's Garage. Today I want to talk to you about the secret to a long-lasting brake job. There's no reason you shouldn't be able to get 50,000-60,000 miles from a brake job unless you're what I call a jackrabbit. What you see here are new components, the major components of a brake job. Everybody runs out, they buy nice premium brake pads, a new rotor. The modern braking system utilizes what's known as a floating caliper. The caliper must float. Not only does the caliper have to float, but so do the brake pads. Now, the caliper does not float on the wheel, it doesn't float on the rotor, it doesn't float on the axle, it floats on the caliper bracket. The caliper bracket is the most ignored part of the braking system. If you've watched any of my previous videos I've posted on brakes, you'll see I pay particular attention to the caliper bracket. The caliper bracket must be cleaned and properly lubricated. This is what this video is about, the secret to a long-lasting brake job. What you see here is the rotor and caliper bracket I just removed from a vehicle I'm working on. The make and model is not important, but now you'll notice that the inside of the rotor is all rusty. All the braking was being done to the outside, which is all scored up. What I wanted to show you on this bracket that I just removed is the inner pad is frozen solid. It was doing absolutely nothing. All the work was being done to the outside, which prematurely wore out the brakes. So what we're going to concentrate on today is properly servicing this caliper bracket. I hope you find this interesting. So we're gonna wallop it a few times, I guess. Boy, that's really stuck in there. I'm gonna get a bigger hammer. Alright, let's now see if we can get this thing out of there. My God. There we go. Had to be a little bit of force there, but you can see the problem with the braking. This thing was just rusted right in there. Next, we're going to remove the glide pins and inspect them. They've still got some lubrication on them, but not a lot. But they appear to be in good condition. We're going to clean them. We're going to replace the boots. We're going to clean out these bores, and we're going to put new grease in there. Now we're going to take the hardware pieces off. Now always replace your hardware pieces, your hardware clips. Pull that off. Pull this one off. Okay, so those are gone. So now we're left with just the bracket. Now I don't know how well you can see this, but the problem here is all this rust that's built up underneath these clips. The clips have rusted, plus there's all kinds of rust that's built up in these channels where the clips go. And that's what's caused the pads to freeze in place. So we're going to wire brush this and then take a file and clean all that scale right down to its original material. I've got a wire brush attached to a drill, and I'm going to go ahead and clean this whole area best I can. Get all that, much of that scale out as possible. You may not get it all, but we'll take care of the rest of it with a file. But we're going to try to clean that all out very nicely, that whole area. Give us a little more speed here. Okay, we've done the best we can with the wire brush. Now we're going to take a nice file and we're going to remove any of that scale that the wire brush did not get rid of. Okay, I have a nice sharp file in my hand, and I'm going to go ahead and let's tighten this up a little bit so it don't move around on us. And I'm going to clean up any scale. I'm going to bring this right down to the original metal of the bracket. We're not trying to resize it, we're just trying to clean it up. If you don't get all this scale off, then that'll cause the pads to fit tighter than normal, and then they'll get stuck. It won't float as easily as they should. Very important that the pads float as well as the caliper. Right, I can see bare metal now. Now we're going to re-lubricate this. We're going to put something on it to prevent it from rusting. Whenever you sandblast or file or wire brush something, when you expose the original metal, it rusts very quickly. So we're going to have to put something on there before we reinstall this to prevent that from rusting. We're going to actually use anti-seize. Is a good lubrication for under here that'll prevent that from rusting up. So I think we got this down pretty good, so make sure you pay attention to that. Looks like there's a little bit of scale right there. So we got that pretty clean, and we're going to repeat this procedure on the other side. Now I'm going to take a small Dremel type wire brush. I'm going to clean around the area where the dust boots attach for the glide pins. I didn't mention this before, but make sure you wear safety glasses when you're doing all this stuff. This will make sure that the dust boot fits properly. Okay, now we're going to take it outside to a well-ventilated area, and we're going to clean out the glide pin bores. If you've seen any of my videos before, this is a little bench I fashioned outside the garage when I need to work in a ventilated area, or as you can see, I need to paint something. It's just a little piece of plywood and a 2x4 frame on top of a couple of sawhorses. Comes in handy for outside work. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to carefully fill up. Now make sure you have safety glasses on, because this could blast you in the face. So I'm going to carefully fill up these bores with brake cleaner. That one's done. Oops, see what I mean? Okay, now I'm going to take a small bottle brush, and I'm just going to go in there and clean out all that old grease. There wasn't much in there to begin with. I never see anybody online doing this, and I don't know why. But now you'll know my secrets. Got more than 40 years experience working on this stuff. Okay, now that that's clean, I'm going to give it another good blast with the now you can't see in there, but that looks nice and shiny in there now. Off camera, I went ahead and cleaned and inspected the glide pins. They're both in excellent condition. And I used that same wire brush Dremel to clean out the little journal in the glide pins. So those, if there was any problem with these whatsoever, then I would have replaced them. It's not big money to replace those. But these are in excellent shape, so I cleaned them up and cleaned out the journal with the Dremel. So So to start with, I've got these little industrial Q-tips, and I'm going to put a little sill glide on them. If I can get some out, it looks like I'll have to get a new container of this. And I'm going to stick it inside. Now you don't need to overdo it here. If you put too much, then what's going to happen is the pins are going to want to pop right out on you. Put just a little dab more. You don't need a huge amount. That ought to be plenty. Alright, so before we install the boots, we're going to work these back and forth. You can hear the air coming out. You want to hear that nice little pop when they come out, like you're like we used to do when we were kids to Coke bottles. All right, looks like we need a little bit more in that one. If the thing wants to pop out on you, then you have too much in there. That's good. It's suctioning. Yeah, that's perfect. I like that. All right, now let's check out the other side. I like that. Okay, so that's good. We're happy with that. So now we're going to go ahead and install the dust boots. Okay, we're going to slip the new dust boot on. Sometimes that's easier said than done. There we go. That went on fairly easy. And now we're going to put in the new glide pins, and that went on very nicely. Now we're going to do the same on the other side. Now the glide pin boots fit quite nicely because we took the time to clean them. Just as I say that, I'm in trouble with this one. There we go. That's on there nicely. And the fact that we cleaned them, no dust is going to get in there. They're going to fit right in their little journals. And it's very important that it stays clean in there. That's why we always replace the dust boots. So now we're going to take the Permatex anti-seize and we're going to get a clean Q-tip. The reason I use these industrial Q-tips is these brushes that come with these things are too big, and you're going to gob it all over the place. You don't want to, you want to lubricate it, yes, and protect it for rust, but you don't want so much on there that it's going to get all over the brakes and the new brake rotor. So we're just going to coat this whole area now. And this will, this area that we just cleaned with the file and the wire brush, this will prevent it from rusting up again. In fact, I'm getting a little too much on there, so we'll wipe some of that off. And we're going to do the same on the other side. Make sure that's nicely coated on there. So anything you sandblast or rust, you know, clean off rust, it rusts up really quick when you expose the bare metal. Now you could replace these brackets. That would solve all the problems. Sometimes you have to buy the whole caliper with them. Other times you can buy them separately. My experience, they've been between $20 and $30 each to buy them separately. Like I say, on some models you can't get them. Now I've got a clean Q-tip here, and what I'm doing is just trying to take off the excess. Matter of fact, I'm going to take a little rag and dab off some of that excess. Don't need a lot of it on there. That looks good. Okay. Alright, so now we've got our journals all lubricated with the anti-seize, and we've got our glide pins installed. We're going to go ahead and put on the hardware clips. Now these hardware clips on this particular type of bracket will only go one way. If you try to put them the wrong way, what will happen is this piece here will interfere with the boot. So this goes on this way. There we go. Clips on nice and easily. We'll clip the other one on. There, it went on very nicely. And now we're going to take a Q-tip and we're going to put the brake caliper grease. Now some people like to use the anti-seize for this part here, but this brake caliper grease was made exactly for this reason. So we're going to put a little bit on here. Not too much. Like I said, we don't want to put so much that we're contaminating the rotor and the pads themselves, but you generally want it pretty well lubricated. That seems pretty good. So now we're ready to install the pads, but I'm going to go and thoroughly wash my hands before I handle those pads, so we'll do that inside. What I've gone ahead and done here is take one of the rotors I intend to discard, and I place the bracket on top of it. I've thoroughly washed my hands so I won't contaminate the pads as little as possible. And I'm ready to slip the pads onto the bracket, what's called loading up the bracket. Now, the reason I'm doing it this way, it's far easier to do it this way than it is bent over at the car trying to slide them in once the bracket's been installed. So the pad with the two little nubbers on toward the center are the outside pad. We're going to go ahead and install this now. Hopefully it'll go in easily. It should after all the work we've done. And it slides in very nicely. And you can see it goes back and forth quite nicely. Now, what I'm going to do here, another reason I do it this way, is it gives me the opportunity to spray on some disc brake quiet material without getting it all over the rotor. This rotor I'm going to discard, so I don't care if it gets on it. So what I'm going to do is spray a little disc brake quiet. There's nothing worse than doing a nice brake job and then have the customer come back because the brakes are squealing. So we're going to give it a little shot of that. Yeah, that's good. Maybe I put it on a little too heavy, but that's fine. It's not going to hurt anything. So now we're going to flip this thing around, the vise around, and we're going to install the inner pad the same way. Hopefully that'll slide on nicely, and it does. So you can see how this is going to, these pads now are going to slide nicely with the caliper. And we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to give it a little shot of anti-squeal. Let that set up for a second and we'll give it a little more. And there's no danger of contaminating the other pad because it's on the rotor. And we don't care if we contaminate this rotor because we're going to discard it. So to review here, we've cleaned out the boards for the glide pins. We've cleaned and inspected the glide pins. We've installed new grease. We've installed new boots. We cleaned out and filed the journals where the hardware clips go. We've lubricated underneath the hardware clips with anti-seize. We've put a coating of brake caliper grease on the outer part of those clips. We've slid the new pads on after washing our hands, and we've given them a light coat of anti-squeal. So what you see here now is what's known as a loaded caliper bracket. We've got the pads on, we've got the hardware all installed, everything's lubricated, and it's ready to be put back on the vehicle. Now, I'm not going to show the rest of this brake job. There are plenty of videos on how to do brakes. I just wanted to emphasize the importance of servicing the bracket. It goes largely ignored, and it can cut the life of your brakes probably in half or more if you don't pay attention to this bracket. So I want to thank you very much for watching Rick's Garage today. And it is my very sincere hope that you tune in to me again sometime.